Meeting to order. I'm serving as a temporary chair today because Chairman Moran is out of town. And as most of you know, Jeff Mangan had left the board after the last meeting. So Jim became the chairman. Ray Waller doesn't think he was supposed to be here today because he had his last meeting last time and the way he looked at it. So with that, we'll take the roll call. Commissioner Trapila. Commissioner Kontravitz. Here. Nice spelling. I pronounced it right, didn't I?
Yeah.
I like that. Commissioner Humble.
Here.
Commissioner Robinson, I'm here too, so that's the ones who are here. I'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Normally at our first meeting of the year, we elect a new chair and a vice chair, and that's what our procedures require us to do, or at least don't require us, but that's what our procedures are. However, the city has not announced their selection of the two vacancies yet. They're going to do that at the February 7th meeting. So without objection, we'll not conduct the elections until next meeting. Does anybody object to that? Okay. Consent agenda. Consent agenda is made up of routine day-to-day items that require board action, but do not appear to have significant impact. Items may be pulled from the consent agenda for separate discussion or vote by any board member. Approval of the board meeting minutes from December 15th. Payroll checks totaling $63,098.31. Maintenance and operations checks totaling $1,260,940.41. Approved passenger facility charge totaling $80,077.84. And financial reports for November and December. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Director's report.
Well, thank you, everybody, and happy 2012. A couple of things we'll go over quickly. We've got a really full agenda today that covers most of the things we normally talk about, but a few things didn't make it onto the agenda today. As you know, we had a record year in 2011. We were up about 8.5% over 2010. 2010 was nearly a record year. We only fell a couple thousand shy of 2005, which was our busiest year. But in 2011, we put over 1,000 people per month on planes, more than we ever had in our past. So a terrific year, not even close to not being a record year, and something I think we all can be very proud of. We saw not only improvements in passengers on Allegiant, which they were the only airline that really added flights last year, but the scheduled carriers, the daily carriers, Alaska, United, and Delta, all saw increased load factors for the year and much stronger passenger volumes. On average, we put about 83% load factors for the entire year on our flights out of Great Falls on the scheduled carriers. Allegiant's higher than that, obviously, but they don't run a scheduled operation. So a tremendous year by all accounts in terms of passenger activity. As you saw in the weekly reports, we ran a little shy on parking. In the month of December, we were down to our last couple dozen stalls, and so thus we have a couple parking projects on the agenda today. But really terrific year activity-wise, something that I think we can all be very excited about as we look ahead into the new year. And already this year, between now and June, Allegiant has over 6,000 additional seats in the market. So it looks to be a strong start to 2012 too. So very exciting. As Owen mentioned, we have heard from the City Council that they plan to appoint at the February 7th meeting our two board members that are open for vacancies. So we'll expect to hear something towards the end of next week on that. The FAA bill, I've been keeping you informed as we hear. I understand today that I believe the temporary bill should be passed. The current effort is to get the FAA extended until February 17th. And then the plan beyond that is there's been a couple breakthroughs on the longer-term labor issues that were coming up on the long-term bill. And both houses, or both the congressional, the House and the Senate, believe that they'll be able to quickly get an agreement on a long-term bill. What we've heard is that it's going to be a 2 or 3 year bill. So that's really good. If we can get that done, if they can get that done in the next 2 to 3 weeks, the federal funding should be released for the remainder of the year from the ticket tax fund, the Aviation Trust Fund, and that would impact our terminal project as we have about $4 million in grants we're waiting on for that terminal project. So we're hopeful they're successful in both those efforts. They can get the FAA extended for 2 weeks and then hurry up and get the multi-year bill done. Then the FAA funds would be released for the year, and when we could potentially have a grant in the May-June timeframe for our terminal project. So something we're watching closely. And then lastly, on the terminal project, as we reported in the weekly report, we just recently passed 30% design. We had a design meeting in-house about 2 weeks ago to continue those efforts. Project's moving along really nicely. We talked to the FAA about it last week, prepping them for the grant application and the environmental checklist that we have to do for the project. And hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll have another meeting where we'll be moving those plans into about the 50% design phase. And still planning to bid that project in the late March, open bids, or late March to mid-April, and have bids open and ready to go for about a June construction date. So exciting stuff. The project seems to be moving along well, and we're beginning to really see kind of the shape and form of how that project will lay out. So good progress there. And that's really all I have this month for the director's report.
Thank you. As we get into the agenda items, are there any agenda items that present a conflict of interest and subsequent require a member to abstain from discussion or vote? Okay, seeing none. If one comes up later, announce it, please. We've changed the agenda items because of people who are here. Makes it more convenient. Agenda item number 1, which was an investment discussion, has moved down to number 4. And agenda item number 4, which was the Falls Gateway broker discussion, is moved up to number 1. So, Director, if you take that.
Absolutely. Well, as you may recall, over the last, I guess it's been 9 months to almost a year, we've been talking about the retail development of the property we have along the interstate next to the county jail. It's about 150 acres. We refer to it as the Falls Gateway Center. And it's been out on LoopNet and some other listing sites now for about 9 months. And as we've gone through that process, we have considered the idea of having a broker involved in marketing the site. About 3 months ago, we were visited by Kidder Matthews, who has some interest in marketing the site. They have also done some retail development at airports at Portland, for example. And so we began talking to Kidder Matthews about the possibility of marketing the site. They had approached us. And over the last couple of months, we've had a number of back and forth discussions about the benefits of that, what a relationship with them would bring. So we received this packet that we provided to you all prior to the meeting. The marketing proposals, it's called, outlines the services they could provide. Generally speaking, the broker, typically like any real estate broker, it's a relationship that where we would be represented. Oftentimes the tenant might be represented. Sometimes they'll have the same broker. More or less, the compensation is the same whether there's 1 or 2 brokers involved in the transaction. They just simply split the commission. What we had told Kidder Matthews as one of the principles was, we wanted to form a relationship that was transaction-based. Where we're not forming some type of marketing relationship that the airport would be paying for up front. And so what they've brought to us today is some general information on their firm and how they think they can market the site. We think there's benefit in putting together a relationship like this to get better exposure for our property. They have a great relationship with a number of the folks that represent retailers that are active in our region. As you might imagine, many of the retailers have a regional-based approach to property development, and many of the brokers representing our region are in the Northwest and the Portland, Seattle area. So I'd like to turn this over just for a minute or two, Craig, if you have some comments maybe and could kind of walk us through what's here. But more or less what we're interested in bringing to the board would be an agreement to have Kidder Matthews represent our property for the next 6 months. What that would entail is if they bring to us a retail deal, basically a transaction, the board would get yet another opportunity to actually approve the real estate transaction, which would be the rents, the commissions, and everything associated financially with that transaction. The initial commitment would just be an exclusive brokerage agreement where they would have rights to develop, to market the site and bring tenants to the site exclusively for that first 6 months period. And Greg, if you'd like to provide some comments to further educate the board.
Might introduce him to everybody because he's...
Absolutely, I'm going to cough here though. Craig Spinks is with Kidder Matthews out of their Portland office. He's also a landowner here in Montana and has retail experience throughout the Northwest and also experience developing property in Montana. It's just one of those coincidences where one day he called and said, I know you guys have some property, are you available to see it? He happened to be in Montana, and so we showed him the site that day. And I think he agrees that in terms of Great Falls market, it's a tremendous opportunity out there that we have with the Falls Gateway Center. And hopefully, if we're able to form a partnership, something that we could both benefit from in its development. So again, Craig Spinks from Kidder Matthews.
Here, I'll at least give you color offerings, okay? They look pretty. Even got a picture of Glacier in there. You can't see Glacier in black and white. So,
Thank you.
yeah, I saw that there.
Mr. Ansel Adams, sorry.
I saw yours was black and white there, and I said, no, I need and John's. I see John's is color.
I didn't print mine off, so I'm thankful that you did.
Oh, okay. Do I stand, John, or sit?
You can, you might stand up.
Step right up to the microphone.
Step right up to the mic, huh? Well, actually, I've been selling, just a real quick snapshot, I've been selling commercial properties for 35 years. And it's taken, and I'm somewhat unusual in that I've sold properties right here in this town. The First Interstate Bank branch was a property that I sold some years ago. I was working with First Interstate out of Billings, and they were going to sell and then lease back a half a dozen bank branches. And they wanted to raise about $6 million for a new tech center in Billings. And my niche of the market had been working with particular types of buyers that like those types of properties, so that's how I got involved. And Great Falls, that property was sold to an investor in St. Louis. He never even visited the site. He bought it sight unseen, but of course he was buying the financial strength of First Interstate and also a lease. But so I've had quite a bit of experience up here in the Montana market, and even though Oregon's a beautiful state, great fishing, great hunting, there is nothing like the eastern front of the Rockies. And I sort of fell in love with it 10, 12 years ago. Owned land northwest of Choteau. Doesn't make any financial sense land. It's just view gorgeous property on Blackleaf Creek. And I intend to build a cabin up there. But so I've got a real connection here with and love the state. And then when John and I were talking about a potential retail development, well, I've been selling retail for 35 years, and the company, Kidder Matthews, that I work with, is the largest private brokerage in the Northwest. We've got 5 offices in Seattle and 1 in Portland, and 125 brokers all total within the company. And so we have a lot of relationships with retailers and retail developers. And so my interest was that John showed me the property. I thought, gee, this is a great opportunity, great area. There's some tenants that definitely aren't here that ought to be here. And I'm very familiar with the shopping center, Great Falls Marketplace. I know the owners of that property. So I felt that after further thought, it'd be a good opportunity to put some numbers together and start looking into this. So our company put this proposal together, and it's basically just starting out and giving an introduction as to who Kidder Matthews is and what we've done over the years. We put together a team of people, because this is a type of a thing where you have to have several brokers involved. They have all different areas of expertise, and it gives a snapshot of some of the transactions that we've done and been involved with. And our company is very active in the leasing and selling of investment properties, retail in particular. The company is also very strong in industrial, but I'm in the retail aspect of it, and between our Portland and Seattle offices, we feel we have a strong team in terms of the retail. We also have relationships with a lot of the other retail developers and brokers in the Northwest. And a lot of those other brokers may represent some of the national tenants, and we would have to interface with those people if we were to bring tenants in. But in essence, the marketing team, you can see that beyond tab 2 there. It gives a snapshot of who the people are in our company and what they've done, and then the marketing story. And I think anytime you have a brokerage coming in from out of state, I told John when I saw this opportunity, I said, you know, you really need to get some horsepower behind this, because you've got to get national exposure to the big boys, the big tenants. And oftentimes, you know, they're gonna think, well, Great Falls, we've got other bigger cities to go to. We don't need to be involved in Great Falls. But you need to have a brokerage company that can get the story out to them. So it sort of fit for me, given the fact that I have been in Montana so much, know the area, know the potential. I mean, just like Great Falls is a great jumping off point for Glacier National Park. It's far more beautiful to go here and go north than it is to fly into Kalispell. You don't see anything. So there's a lot of potential that this city has, notwithstanding the energy development that's occurring, the strong agriculture industry that's already here, been here for years. And then, of course, the Canadians coming down south from southern Alberta and Saskatchewan. And I happen to know also from some other connections that how the Canadian influence has a very, very positive effect upon Great Falls and the marketing, and retail in particular. This is a kind of a story that you got to get to the retailers for them to hear it, and you got to have the avenues to get into them, and that's where Kidder Matthews and our experience and past relationships, we think that we're going to be able to get this message out to people. There's also a big convention coming up in Las Vegas. That's where you have to have all of your marketing and your presentation materials together, where then you would present that to these retailers, the Costcos, the Targets, the Kohl's of the world, or maybe some major retail developers that might want to come in here and be the owner-developer and develop a high-class shopping center. I'll give you an example here of what I'm talking about as well that I brought. One of the flyers here got bent in my baggage, but might be even easier for me just to hold it up. This was a offering that we put together for Peace Health, which is a large hospital in Washington. They own land north of Portland in the Ridgefield area. But it's not unlike this property because it's borderline rural. But our company, along with a developer, put this offering together for Peace Health to show the opportunity that retailers should be able to see of a development on this hospital property. They wanted to put a retail development in because they have a lot of excess land. And you can see the high quality and the professional. These are the kind of renderings that you have to have when you go to the retailers and you want to talk the Great Falls story. And in addition to all of the demographics and why the market is an opportunity, I can't leave these with you because the developer swore, they've got it sworn to secrecy. But I'll at least give you, you can take a look at them. But this is the type of thing that we do to get the message out, to at least give the retailers and developers the story of the potential of this site. And of course, these kinds of things are not cheap. You have to bring together a company in Portland is very good at doing this. And so you'll see Kidder Matthews in this offering as well as being part of the team. But in the world of retail development today, it's pretty expensive, and you've got to put a good presentation together if you want to get the eye and the attention of the board of some retailer to come in here and make a decision. I sort of hate to go on and on here, John, because I don't know what your timing is, and I don't know if it'd be a lot better for them to be asking questions.
Well, I think that's...
If I've given you a snapshot, I don't like to ramble.
And just to clarify for the board's purpose, as we've talked about our property over the last year, we had told the board that our intention was to go ahead and get it listed, make contacts with additional retailers, and as we saw the business cycle improving to where retailers are going to be expanding again, or if we felt that we needed more concentrated effort, that might be the appropriate time to engage a broker. And we think both of those things are true now. As we're seeing in Great Falls right now, there's a number of new chains that have moved to town. AutoZone should be opening up in the next few weeks. Holiday Inn Express built their new hotel last year. Cafe Rio opened. Baja Fresh. There's a lot of new retail interest in Great Falls in a consolidated wave that we haven't seen in a while. Our preliminary discussions with some of the retailers we've contacted, we got good feedback, but there wasn't an immediacy to really driving any of those proposals ahead right away. We think we would benefit from the additional marketing focus of having a Kidder Matthews represent that property for a period of time and try to bring in some of these deals. And so we would recommend to the board that you entertain a motion to have a marketing agreement with Kidder Matthews for 6 months, as it says in here, to market the site exclusively. And what that would mean is simply that any retail development that comes about will be routed through them for the next 6 months. And if we decided to extend it further, we could. As a way of increasing the exposure of the property. So that's the action we would ask for is if the board is this is something the board is interested and comfortable with, we'd like to request a motion to sign an exclusive market agreement with Kidder Matthews. And again, every property that would come out of that would again have board action as we enter into the transaction itself.
Commissioner Humble.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we accept an exclusive representation from Kidder Matthews for a period of 6 months.
Is there a second? Second.
I would mention too, typically the listings for land are more like a year, but because it's a fairly lengthy process to be able to get into these retailers, and then like anybody, they don't respond tomorrow. They'll get the information and you have your meetings, and then it'll be 3 or 4 months, and but I told John I think we could make real strong effort in the 6 months, and by showing that we're making excellent progress, working hard, and be able to show that to you, we would be able to have the right, assuming you agree, to have another extension for 6 months. But initially, it would be a 6-month listing with hopefully that option in there.
Commissioner,
I marked out a few things here in the proposal. Just as a point of interest, oil and gas leasing is now occurring near Fairfield, which is between here and Shoal. So that's getting pretty close. One other thing, I noticed that the property that we want to develop, the east end of it is right off the approach end of runway 34. And we have to be certain that we keep the approaches clear with no high-rise buildings, because I am hoping that becomes our crosswind runway. So that would be a point that we need to...
We did vet the height. I mean, it's preliminary, we'd have to do a 7460 on the development, but the height generally for the, we had, it was Stelling Engineers look at it last year. The parcel that gets most heavily impacted is the parcel on the air side, because it's much closer to the runway end. But even with an extension, we did vet the height, and we can get 40 to 50 feet before we start getting problems. It should be plenty for most retail development. We couldn't put a high-rise hotel or anything, but you know, a Walmart, Target, Costco should easily fit under that envelope.
And the only other thing that I had a question here, and it's, this is pretty common to also charge the retail store a percentage.
Thank you.
I mean, for the commission.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm running around here. Were you asking me a question?
I guess that was.
Sorry.
It's pretty common to also charge a retail store part of the commission on the development of this. I noticed here that you said percentage of the gross revenue over the term of the lease isn't great enough for the land that we own here. So accordingly, the tenants and owners would need to provide additional compensation.
Right.
for-
Yeah, there's a couple of different approaches we're going to be taking here, which I've discussed, and John can certainly, and Laura can answer after I'm gone as well. But yeah, the land values here basically wouldn't interest any outside brokers of wanting to come here to Great Falls to work, because it's just not enough of a value given the time and the scope and the work and all. And then you also have, as mentioned in there, you have brokers that represent the retailers, you know, and so they want to be compensated. And in answering your question in a long way, which it may not come up, but we would also bring on board a local brokerage firm here, just to have a presence within the city, that we're not just some outside broker, but we want to also help the community and have and enlist the services of a local commercial broker here to help us. But in answering your question, we may have a retailer that comes in here that we're able to land, and we may look to them for part of the compensation. If we can get the compensation, or possibly have the tenant even pay all of the lease income up front, which occasionally some of them will do. That would then make it very easy, wouldn't even really be any money out of the board's pocket. That's one avenue, and another avenue is just we're going to phase the brokerage commissions in over a 2 or 3 year period, so, and therefore have a high enough rent to where the port can be getting rent immediately, and it will justify the payment of commissions and all. And then the third or the second option may be that there's going to be a developer that may want to come in and own the shopping center, the improvements, and has 2 or 3 national tenants that he works with that would like to come here. And in that case, if that's the option, then Kidder Matthews would be partnering with the developer, and we would be getting our commissions on that side. And the port wouldn't even have to pay us anything. we would in effect be partnering with the developer. And
Well, the
so,
point is that under the motion, we would be hiring Kidder Matthews for 6 months exclusive. And then if they found somebody, whatever proposal would come up. And it could be a number of different kinds of proposals.
yeah, it could
Right,
be.
And what we've provided is, to Greg, is some guidance is, what we want to see is, obviously the commission needs to be reasonable and customary with what the market pays. I mean, that's an obvious, point of starting. And then the other is, we want to begin from day one generating some flow of revenue from this, because from day one, we'll begin incurring some expenses. And, our staff will be involved in reviewing contracts, and, we'll have, the need for signage and maintenance and upkeep in that area. And, so we do need to begin generating, some amount of cash flow from day one. And the deals I did in Colorado Springs, is kind of like what he had described. Our rents were too low to justify both brokers that were involved in the deal, because we had one deal that was a 2-broker deal. And so what the building owner ended up doing, the tenant ended up doing, was paying a portion of the commission directly to keep their ground rent low. The other option is you build it into a ground rent and you charge them a higher ground rent. So those are structures that exist, and that's what we would have to iron out if we are able to get a tenant on the line. With Kidder Matthews, we would have to iron out, this is an acceptable commission structure to us, and, of course, the board would get a chance to vote on that along with the rental structure and everything else.
I think we need to modify the motion to include the right or the privilege of a 6-month extension on the original 6 months, and exclusive.
Well, I mean, we could do that, but the way it's generally done this way is we don't know how happy we're going to be with the time. So the idea is if they do a good job, we would extend it. If they don't, we'd find somebody else. I mean, isn't that kind of the idea? I mean,
Yeah.
I
We can
don't
bring it
expect
back
that
to
would
the
happen,
board.
but
Yeah, we can certainly bring it back to the board, long about April, May, and revisit where we are, and if that's something we want to entertain.
Well, I just seem to get the sense from the discussion that 6 months hardly develops the market.
And I think that's true. I think, what we had, one of the reasons that this goes back to meetings, back in fall, what we had said was, when we were first approached by Kidder Matthews, we would probably entertain a shorter term brokerage agreement since we had solicited this service. Just like when we had the postal concession business, a lot of times, we'll try to do something. If somebody approaches us and say, when we have this great idea, a lot of times we'll try to say, okay, we'll do that for some period of time, but we want the chance to revisit and see how it's going sooner rather than later. I think, if we're happy with their services, then it makes sense to extend it. At some point, if nothing's happening and we decide this is a venture we like, the way this is structured, we want to keep doing it, we would probably want to go out and solicit for this, even nationally, to see if anyone else would be interested in providing the service. And that's why, we had initially, when contacted by Craig, said we would probably recommend the board 6 months, since this isn't something we've gone out and solicited.
is that okay?
Sure.
Any more discussion from the board? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, and there's no listing agreement in there, but I assume that it's going to be just a standard document that is used 100 times over, and John will be able to easily see there's nothing unusual about it.
And of course, we'd have that reviewed by our council.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right, thank you. Item number 2 is construction of employee parking lot / Republic contract.
Yes, as I mentioned in the director's report, we exceeded our expectations for parking in December, and we got down to our last 30 stalls, and that was a little bit of a surprise to us. We hadn't anticipated that kind of demand, but it's good news. And as a result, as you've been probably following in the monthly or in the weekly reports, is we need to go out and make some changes to the lot. And one of the first changes and the most effective ways we can get parking is by moving the employee parking over to the side of the building. We have an area of old ramp that's off on the south west side of the terminal building, right adjacent to the rental car parking lot. It's just separated by a fence there. And by taking that fence from a higher point up on the ramp and routing it down towards the fire station, we can create a new employee lot of about 100 stalls. And the budget for that, we originally think it was right around $25,000. We aren't able to find anyone that's really out there painting right this time of year. They've all cleaned up their equipment for the year and put it away. So we're probably going to have to do the painting ourselves. We're gearing up to do that. But there's still about $13,000 in new fencing that we have to put out there to open up that employee lot. That'll give us about 100 stalls. When we move the employees over, that'll open up 65 stalls that we can very quickly add into the public parking and right away get the benefit of those stalls. In addition, once the employee lot is over on the side here, what that allows us to do in the future with that 100 stalls, there's a row that we can actually split in half and add about 20 stalls more to the rental car lot since it's adjacent. So it gives us some future expansion potential, maybe even this summer for the rental cars if they want that space. As we began looking at moving the employee lot, Republic expressed interest in coming in and doing those improvements. As you know, they have an agreement with us to operate the parking lot, and through that agreement, they collect the majority of the revenue. There's a revenue sharing part of the deal where we get the revenue back, but in cases like this, because they get the benefit of the revenue sharing, they're interested in doing the parking lot improvements, so we don't have to take it out of our budget. So what we were presented with was a new revenue schedule. In here is board item number 2. Where they're going to take the improvements cost about $13,000. The majority of the $10,000 we'll end up absorbing because it's going to be our staff time. But then they're going to change the structure of parking charges to the employees in order to recuperate the cost of the improvements out there. They've got a multi-year step schedule, but more or less what they plan to do is we've got 2 categories of employees out there. Some that are actually employed here on site. They pay a lower fee, and then we've got flight crews that domicile here, and so they pay a higher fee because it's they fly out. They're not here all the time. Their car is here all the time, so more or less it's constantly in a spot. Today we charge $4 to the employees that work here and $10 to the domiciled employees. As you can see in their proposed structure here, they'll move that up to eventually over the next 4 years where the employees that do work here pay $8 a month and the employees that are domiciled here pay $20 a month in order to recuperate the cost of the fencing. They obviously get the additional revenue in order to offset their cost of the fencing. And we think this is probably a preferable means of doing this to us as we don't have to expend this out of our budget of $13,000 for the fencing. And then it keeps it cleaner too because they're already collecting the revenue for this service, and that way they'll be expending the money, collecting the revenue, and we'll continue the relationship we have. The one thing we will probably change is right now the employees use a magnetic card to get in and out of that lot. I think we'll probably go to a hang tag system with a list of allowable license plates. And the main reason is we just don't have electric over there near where the new lot is. The magnetic strip, you can give the magnetic card to your neighbor the same way you can give a hang tag to the neighbor, so it doesn't really provide any additional security for us. What we've found already is we know that the magnetic cards have not been turned back in a number of cases. We've been told that there's employees that aren't working here anymore that have been still parking that lot. So with the hang tag system, it's going to be a little bit easier because we'll have a list of the allowable license plates, and those will be checked. There'll be some spot audits done by Republic. We'll go out there every day and pick a number of tags off, look at the license plate numbers that they've got for those tags and make sure they match. And then, of course, if employees are abusing that, they won't be allowed to park in the employee lot anymore. They'll have to go to the public lot, which is obviously a lot more than what we're charging. But, so that's the idea here, and what we're asking for is approval of the board to go ahead and execute this agreement with Republic, including the employee lot charge increase, and then the $13,000 in fencing they'll actually pay for. We'll do the parking lot. We think it's only $300 or $400 of paint that we'll be putting into the project. And then, of course, our guys will be doing the striping.
Question in regards
Sure.
to that. I had mentioned Jim Cummings, and, they have a volunteer group that does that. I did have some additional discussion with him, and he said that temperature has to be a certain degree, and, so would we be better off to wait for striping, and then perhaps rather than doing it with our own labor, doing it with a volunteer group that of course benefits the community, but that we might not have to do it twice?
Well, we may have to do it twice anyway. I mean,
Yeah,
typically,
that's what I'm thinking is we'll probably want to do it twice anyway. And we can, initially just get it, just a light coat on there. We're gonna have to come back in the summer and fix up the ADA spots, we probably won't get those all painted blue and those kind of things. So I do see in the spring or summer of actually going over it again.
and that's typical, for example, the work we just did out on the taxi lane out there, the first coat of paint's down, and then you wait and, let that weather in a little bit and then come back and hit it again. We do an awful lot of painting, obviously with the runway and the taxiway, so our guys are fairly good at it. The reason I think we can't wait altogether is March was our strongest month of parking last year, which until December, the last couple of weeks of December, but if you look at it on a monthly basis, it's actually March. And Legion has 10 additional flights in March this year. So I think there's a potential that we could overrun the lot as early as March. And I think certainly by May and June, we're going to have big problems. So I think the 65 stalls are going to be needed in the spring. And this is way beyond what we were projecting last year because, we had thought we would carry at least 100 stalls into the summer when we could go out and do a bigger project. But based on December, it's now looking like we're getting jammed up. So I think we have to do something. We had talked to a couple groups in town, and everybody had weatherized their machine. So we'll have to go out there and get the first coat down, and then we can look at it again in the springtime, decide if we want the Optimist to come in and lay down a finish coat on that, or if at that point it's just easier for us to do it, or whatever. But unfortunately, that gave us quite a surprise in December to see the lot that full. And we had just, so we had already taken about 30 stalls out of the employee lot because Republic had told us they thought we would overrun it in December. So we went out and took about 30 stalls out of the employee lot by moving some barriers around. We had kind of a messed up situation for the employees, but we had overflow parking they could go to. And we got down to our last 30 stalls on Saturday before Christmas. So, we were down to those last stalls. So if we get the 65 back, I think that's going to be enough to get us into the summer. And in a later item on the work session, we've actually engaged CH2M Hill to begin looking at the lot longer term in case we need substantial capacity beyond that. But initially, I think we've got to do something before March, or we could end up out of stalls again.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to accept the proposal for employee parking?
I move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the proposal for employee parking with Republic Parking picking up the rest of the charges. Any more further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to see if Rob would have some time and show me what we're talking about out there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. It's enough for parking lots until we get the work session, right?
Hope so.
Number 3, the change order United Materials for the Northeast Air Park.
Absolutely. This, as we spoke last month in the working session, we've got, we're closing up the construction and closing out this project from last fall. This is the paving that happened over next to AvMax and down into the Holman areas and that taxi lane adjacent between the two of them. Fortunately, overall, this is a deduct change order. And we've split it into 2 work items. The scope of work has item 1 and item 2. And so we've split it because we hadn't talked about item 2 in a previous session, so that's on the work session. But what we're asking for here is a motion to approve the task order number 5 to the contract, which will, in total is a deduct change order to close out the actual paving amounts versus what we had in the original scope of work. Rod, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, yeah, on that northeastern part, on the change order, what we discussed before was there was some communication cable that we had to cut part of the conduit out to, just to kind of speed things up and help the, get the contractor through there. And then that was replaced. And another one, we just changed a regular manhole lid to a slotted manhole lid into the drain, into the drainage piping. And that was a positive change of $716. And then on the non-federal schedule, there was a deduct for some concrete pavement that didn't need to be removed, and then a deduct for some paving that wasn't needed, and then another one was a sanitary line sewer repair next to the concrete hangar, which needed to be repaired. When they took the concrete out away from there, it was rebarred into this portion, so that damaged some of that. So that one piece was just rebuilt, and when they did do a little bit of damage there, but United Materials picked up the damage just to some PVC piping. So that was most of those changes.
Yes.
I move to approve change order number 2 to AIP 49.
Is there a second?
Go ahead.
Second.
Any further discussion on change order that saves us money?
I don't suppose any of this money came off of what Dwight owes.
Yeah.
Oh, it did? Good.
I had that, a couple thousand or 3,000.
More than Keith and you look at
Okay, all in favor of the
Spread it out.
motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll move to item number 4, which is back to item number 1, which is investment discussion.
Yes, this is a carryover from last month's work session where we had talked about expanding our investment capabilities. We think it's within the policy to invest in federally insured bank securities from banks outside the state. And I'll let Sharon, she's, last month, we've gotten some new information, and the investment options have changed a little bit, but we still think it's worthwhile to consider the question, and then we may not have any immediate action on that, but I'll let Sharon explain that.
Okay, so you had asked us last time to take a look at if we invested this for 5 years, if we needed the money in a couple of years, what kind of a penalty would we face? So with a brokerage CD, what happens is if you buy the CD at a certain amount, the day that you sell it, the current rate that day is dictates whether you're going to win or lose. So, but what you do is you, obviously if you have a 5-year CD and you cut it off at 2.5 years, you are still going to gain whatever you, whatever interest rate you had, you'll gain that amount. You sell it at that rate, and let's say it's selling for 3% instead of the 1% that you purchased it at. You may lose some money, however, you may not, depending upon how much you've gained at that point. So, and if the rate is less, then obviously you've got a CD that's worth more. So with the brokerage CD, you sell it at the current rate that day. So that being said, when I came to you last time, we had CDs at 2.05. Today we have 1.75. So our suggestion, our recommendation would probably be just to wait a little bit, if you're okay with us doing this still.
The general idea and what we had wanted to do is we had a 2% return we could have gotten. The idea was to take a small portion of our money. We had set a reserve policy last year of about $1.2 to $1.3 million that we want to leave unobstructed in reserves to give us a year, more or less 6 months, I guess, of operating costs and debt service that we have in the bank. So we had planned on potentially taking $500,000 and putting it away for a period of 5 years to take advantage of the higher yields. Because the yield curve has been so flat, and even last week, now the Fed is saying that there's not likely to be any escalation for another 2 years. If we can take advantage of a 2% return, we think it's worthwhile to lock that in for a 5-year period. So we have some portion of our portfolio that's earning higher yield now. Now, it may eventually be a lower yield than what we're getting down the road, but our interest earnings have been hurt so badly over the last 5 years that we think it's worthwhile to have one piece of it yielding higher, and taking that piece of it that we're not going to break into our last $500,000 unless there's really a big cash crunch, and locking away for 5 years to us seems like a reasonable treasury decision, because we have no plan to use for that money, and we wouldn't want to use it unless we really had a dire situation and needed to go out and sell that security as a last resort. Anything you want to add to that part of it, Sharon?
Simply that for some reason, for whatever reason with the market, it's been going down recently. I think if we just wait, maybe even a few more weeks, we'll see a little bit of a rise there. So right now, we're making 1.68 with their U.S. bank investments. This would give us just a little bit more than that. And if we tie in at that, then we're into that for 5 years. So let's maybe wait a little bit and see if we can get a better rate.
Would it make some sense, maybe not today, but down the line, to come up with giving you the authorization to, if it gets up to 2, jump on it for $500,000?
Well, and that's what I thought we would bring back to the board, because the initial question, it wasn't necessarily anything we had to act on, but we had a policy, we have state law and policy that wasn't exactly clear as to whether or not we could invest in an out-of-state bank. We did have it reviewed by MIC, and MIC thought we could, as long as it was federally insured, and FDIC insured security, but we did want to bring that to the board to make sure that everyone was comfortable. And then that brought forward some more questions from the board, just as to, would it be appropriate for us to lock away funds for 5 years, and that type of thing, for just a little bit more return. So I think, I don't know that we need an action, but I do think this is an appropriate discussion for us to have regularly about what our investment options are, and whether or not it's something that, everyone is comfortable with us doing. Like I said, we used to get interest earnings of $100,000 a year, wasn't it, at one point?
Oh, yeah.
When we had larger reserves, and of course now our reserves are smaller, but at the same time the yields are horrid. So it would be nice if we had an opportunity to get a 2% yield now to begin locking in a little bit higher return until the yields come back. So again, I don't know that we need an action other than do, this will be something we'll monitor and keep the board informed about from time to time. And then a general understanding that it looks as though it's permissible for us to invest in out-of-state bank securities that are federally insured.
Do you think there'd be an opportunity? I mean, markets aren't going to time themselves according to our board meeting. So do you need a motion that would say, that would give you approval to take action on something if it presented itself before our board meeting?
Yeah, I think our policy allows us to do that, but what we brought to the board was the fact that we've never invested in an out-of-state CD, and
So
now
we're
we
covered
can
with
do
that.
that, and so, yeah, I think.
I mean, we could certainly take a proactive move and have a motion that that the board recognizes we're able to invest in out-of-state bank securities that are federally insured. Something like that.
But you basically already have that
We
authority.
already
believe
have
we
that.
do, we just have not done that, and it was a clarification we had to ask Nick for. Because
But now that we have that, if it gets up to there and between meetings, you would feel comfortable in taking $500,000 and putting it in this?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. All right, item 5 is it's kind of a complicated one because there's 2 different parts of it. Item 1 is additional testing and survey for northeast mixed-use development under the AIP project 3-30-003-49-2011. And that's going to be, that part of it's going to be on our work session. But the other part is the design for design and bidding for passenger parking lot expansion, non-federal, but it's in the same packet, so. And it's hard even reading the packet this time. You can see why you didn't put it in two different packets, because I don't think you could have been able to. So with that little introduction, go ahead.
Right, we have, as we mentioned, we have 2 parking lot projects going. The first is we intend to do this year for certain, which is the employee parking lot. And that's a smaller project which we'll do through the Republic contract. The second is we have a small parcel at the back end of the parking lot that we think we could expand and get approximately 140 more stalls out of. The lot was expanded about 3 or 4 years ago. 2007, and that was a much larger expansion, about 350 stalls. This one's a much smaller scale, but we do want to get a design on the books in the event that we think we need those additional spots. And so we have a 5-year engineering agreement through CH2M Hill. They don't have any work this year, and in their contract, because of the terminal work, is using all of our federal dollars this year. And so we've been working with Morrison and Merrily on this year's construction project for the employee lot. And we presume that maybe we would do this the other lot this summer, but more than likely it would be next summer we would do that project. So we've asked CH2M Hill to put together a scope and fee for us to expand the existing parking lot to get that additional 140 stalls. And we wanted to bring that to the board. We had talked about it at our last meeting that we would begin putting together a design scope for that project, and now we have that from CH2M Hill. The idea, again, get it designed now. At the point at which we think we're going to need those stalls, we want to go ahead and execute that and get the construction started. We would have the design ready to go, so we can bid it quickly and get it in the ground. It's not a federal project. The FAA doesn't allow dollars to be used for parking from the federal funds, so there's no hope of federal dollars down the road on this one. It'd be something we'd have to take out of a construction budget. So generally speaking, this would be something we would probably do in fiscal year 2013 for us, but we want to get the design on the shelf and ready to go in the event we have to do something around July, August of this year to get this thing going if summer volumes build to the point where we're going to need those additional spots. It's probably going to take them 60 days to 90 days to get a project together for us anyway, so we want to get that started as quickly as we can. So we're asking for, with item number 2, I think it is here, yep. Item number 2, permission to begin design of the completion of the parking lot.
Is there a motion?
I move that we approve item number 2 for the parking lot elevation.
I'll second.
Fair enough at that time.
Okay, Mom.
Any questions or discussion?
This is all long-term parking,
Yeah.
none of it is short-term.
None of it's short-term. We think about 140 stalls, which will add to our current 750.
Yeah.
So we'll be right up close to 900 stalls. The employee lot gets a 65, and that should be sufficient to get us through the rest of the fiscal year. But we'll have to look at it around June and see where we are to see if we want to go ahead and bid this and try to get a fall project going, or if we can wait until the next spring.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
One other thing, about the parking, and we're pretty fortunate this year, is during snow removal. That takes up several parking spots for stacking snow. Also Nigut does the parking lot for Republic now, and this last snowstorm, they did a really good job of piling it. Normally, it was just pushed up against that last row, and that takes out 100 stalls right there, so I think it's good that we do get some additional stuff. Just when we do have these big storms, it does take up a lot more room.
You can't get it off on the grass.
Well, we can, you'd have to lower it, or you can take the snow blower out.
Well, that's one thing we had talked about too, is maybe, cutting those chains and putting in a quick link with a lock on it, so that, when there is a storm at the end of the rows, they could go in and with a combination lock or a key lock, open that up and just plow it back into the grass. So this summer, we're definitely going to have to spend a little bit of time rethinking how we get the most utilization out of those stalls. And that's one of the reasons we want to get the employees moved too, is to That way we've got one consolidated lot that operates a lot better than what we have now. And things like opening up those gates and things on the operations side we can do to get more stalls too. We need to look at those too.
All right, we're down to item 6, budget variance and airline incentive program.
Yes, as you may recall, we talked in the fall and all the way back to August. We've been working really hard to get out and talk to the airlines in the last year, and we're coming down to the time of year when routes are announced. There were some announcements last week. You probably heard from Allegiant on other airports in the state. And we think probably between now and the next time we meet will be the critical time for any announcements we might see. In preparation for that, as we talked about in August, this little memo we put together, the airline incentive program update. We had proposed at the time that we set up a variance structure in our budget where if we were able to get a low-cost carrier, that we would come back to the board and ask for a budget variance. So this would be an increase to our actual operating budget for the marketing variance. And back here on the part of the item where we talked about the work session, marketing variance for low-cost carrier, we said we might come back and ask for up to $100,000 in marketing variance dollars, and that would be committed to advertising and promotion of any new airline routes we might get. And we'd like to go ahead and ask for the board to consider a motion to allow me to spend allow me to implement that $55,000 marketing variance should we get a proposal from Service from a low-cost carrier in the next month. That would be something we'd have to act on fairly quickly in order to make it happen and get the agreement signed, and we need the latitude to do that if we would get them. So the first part of this is following up on this memo we'd written back in August. We would like the board to consider a motion for a $55,000 budget variance, increasing our total budget by $55,000. All of those funds to be used for marketing a new low-cost carrier. And then in addition to that, there's a second part of this, which I think is just a notification of the board. Over the last couple of 4 or 5 months, we've been working to get a lot of our capital projects completed for the year. In this year's budget, you may recall, we had over $30,000 for a new security truck. We did acquire that security truck and saved about $9,000, wasn't it? At least $9,000. And then on top of that, we had some snow equipment that we had planned to purchase. We saved on that, what was the neighborhood of?
We have about a $50,000 savings there.
$50,000 savings on the snow equipment for the year. What we'd like to ask is, we'd also in this same memo had told the board that we would probably ask for $20,000 and 4.3 in station improvement costs. That's a capital expenditure. We have significant savings in our capital budget, which we expect to carry through the end of the year because of those 2 projects and some others. We would like to just insert a new capital item. We don't need a budget increase, but that $20,000, we would insert an item for $20,000. That would be for capital and station improvement costs should we get a low-cost airline. So there's really 2 things that we're asking for. The first is a budget variance, an increase in our operating budget of $55,000 for marketing. And then the second thing is, I think, just a notification of the board that we have significant savings in the capital budget, which we will realize. And with that savings, we would like to fund the $20,000 in station construction costs if we get a low-cost airline. Lots of moving parts.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And, should we get a low-cost airline to come in, and we'd have to act upon that in a hurry. It's better than trying to call another meeting. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I look at this as a very positive move towards being as proactive as we can to secure a low-cost airline. So I would move that we approve the request for $55,000 additional budget variance for marketing and to use the $20,000 for capital improvement.
Is that how you want it?
Precisely.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion?
I have a question.
Yep.
In 3.2 here, you said that the chamber is involved because the airports are not allowed to fundraise or contribute funds to attract a specific airline. And then on the next section, we're establishing a budget variance to attract a new airline. So, can we or can't we?
We can't, what we're not allowed to do is to go out and raise funds to directly contribute to an airline and say, here's some money for coming here. What we can do is we're allowed to promote new service and promote ourselves. And so the types of things we would use that $55,000 for instance, is another billboard campaign in Lethbridge to say, fly Great Falls, new low fares, that type of thing. And we can even put a stringer across it that says new airline. We can go out and the kinds of things we're really interested in doing is more advertising in the California markets, which come to Montana in huge numbers. But if you look at the state tourism data, Great Falls is dramatically unrepresented there. For instance, San Francisco and LA are really strong markets for bringing people to Glacier. But if you look at our intercept numbers of where our tourists come from, they're underrepresented, both those markets. So what we would do is we would go out into those markets and begin advertising Great Falls, sending people to our website, telling them we have a new carrier, we have new low-cost fares, that type of thing, so that when they're booking their Glacier trip, we're not ignored in their thinking of where to go. If we were to get a low-cost carrier this summer, it's likely that we would have a cost advantage over most of the west side gateways, Missoula, Kalispell, even Spokane. We may be cheaper than those other airports, so we want to get that message out, and we're allowed to do that. We're allowed to spend money to promote air service out of Great Falls, and we're allowed to promote new flights. What we can't do is to just directly give them money or buy their tickets in any way where we would directly be contributing to that airline's benefit. So that's why we've been working closely with the chambers. They are allowed to promote directly and go ask a carrier specifically, even to tell a carrier, we have this and we'll give it to you if you come, and only you. If we do something, we have to extend that same offer out to other carriers. So in other words, if this low-cost carrier comes and then a low-cost carrier B comes, we have to go back and do the same thing for the other one if we do something specific. And we're not even allowed to differentiate between them. But in this case, what we would like to do is just establish this, this marketing fund, and to the extent that we could get 2 or 3, we would have to break that money out between the 2 or 3 different ones that are out there.
Any more discussion?
But you made that very clear at the time that we took that action in August as well.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. And that concludes our agenda items. Board comments? Commissioner Tripila?
Not right now, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Kontravitz?
I had a couple on the budget variance report, but I'll only ask one. Allegiant Air doesn't pay a gate rental fee, but Dwight charges Allegiant when he services a plane. Does he service every flight? Do you service every Allegiant flight?
No.
No, only service for providing for them is fueling services today.
They have a
Charter.
I was just wondering how we're getting gate rental fees out of Allegiant.
They do pay a gate, what we call a turn charge. But that one in particular was a charter flight. But we have is it $210, I think?
Yeah.
We charge for every time Allegiant lands or any other carrier we don't have an agreement with. We charge $210 for the use of the terminal building as a lump sum. So we do get a charge directly out of them. And then, of course, they have to pay, say, Casino Air or whoever it is, they have to pay some ground handler somewhere to get the people on and off the airplane. So I don't know, Dwight, do you handle any of those charters at all either?
Not recently.
Okay.
Allegiant seems to dominate that market, but when we were doing Extra Airways / Casino Express, we would charge them for our services as well as we would charge them for use of the terminal building and collect those monies and then forward them on to the airport authority at a rate that the airport authority dictates.
And so $210, we actually spent some time calculating that this year. That's roughly equivalent to what any other carrier would pay here for a one-time use of the terminal. So plus, we added a premium to that of about 10%, wasn't it, or 15%?
This year.
Yeah, this year we added a 15% premium to, I don't want to say punish, but because they don't have an agreement with us, they're not a stable customer. The resident carriers like to see that we charge them more because they're not committed to the terminal building. If we have a major expense in the terminal, those other carriers have to pay for it. The carriers only come once or twice, they never recoup that. So it actually is equivalent to a daily use of the terminal.
Commissioner Humble?
Nothing at this time.
I have no comments. Public comment? Any public comment? All right, with no further business to come before the board, I declare this meeting adjourned. We'll start our work session in 10 minutes from now, which will be 27 minutes after by that clock.